I remember as a young kid, driving past the school and all the homeschool kids, we would joke, like wave to the prisoners, or like when kids were on a school bus, we would act like it was a jail bus. When I was homeschooling, they didn't really approach controversial topics. But once you go into community college, you are maybe more in depth covering evolution. Then I'm feeling kind of this religious pull because I had done religious curriculum, religious schooling. Am I denying my faith, or am I doing something wrong? There always is a little something that I can spot in other homeschoolers, and it's never a bad thing, but it always hurts a little bit when someone's like, were you homeschooled? Like when people notice it in me, I'm like, I haven't recovered as much as I thought.
Well, Lauren, welcome to the Ex-Homeschoolers Club. I'm so stoked to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited.
We are kind of new ex-homie friends, and I appreciate so much you reached out to me via DM, and you do some really cool content stuff. And so we were like talking about a way to collaborate, and I was like, okay, well, you got to come on the show and tell your homeschool story. So I'm just gonna like hand it over to you for a few minutes. Tell me a little bit about your homeschool experience, where you grew up, siblings, that kind of a thing. Set the stage a little bit for us of like your homeschool experience.
Yeah. Well, first, I was really excited to find your channel because as an ex-homeschooler, I'm looking for content about people who homeschooled like me. And there's not a lot of it out there, especially now. The content about homeschooling has shifted a lot
Yeah.
after COVID, I think. So it was really great to see that. And for anybody that knows my content, they'll definitely love your content in the Ex-Homeschoolers Club because it's right in the same kind of vein as what I do. But my name is Lauren, and I run a YouTube channel called Unreligiously, where I talk about evangelicalism in the United States. I personally grew up very deep into the evangelical church. I homeschooled for most of my life, went to church 4 or 5 days a week. Yeah, just very, very religious upbringing. So I talk a lot about, yeah, just cultural commentary really on evangelicalism in the US. I started homeschooling right out the gate, right in preschool. My family was not leaning towards homeschooling initially because of religion or anything like that. They had put my older brother in public school, and just with his ADHD, and most of my siblings, we have ADHD. They found that there were some struggles in the elementary school years. So their plan was to pull my brother out and me when I entered school and just do that homeschooled. And then we would go to public school at some kind of, I don't know, unidentified time. But it went really, really well. They felt like, and my younger brother and my younger sister, I have 3 siblings. So all of us ended up homeschooling, and they felt like it went really well. So we just kept doing it. But we did always have the option to go to public school. So I personally did choose to go to the local public school in 8th grade and then partially in 9th grade. And then I went back to homeschooling after that so that I could do more testing out of college classes and just more of a college path. After that, it was a lot easier to do that through homeschooling than through the public high school system.
What's really interesting about what you said there is like you kind of were also given a choice, which I think
Yes.
like a lot of us didn't really get. I know that was a discussion that happened in my house around high school of like, you know, do you want to stick with this? It was working, so it
Yeah.
didn't. Also, the high school I wanted to go to where any of my potential friends would have gone, I wasn't in that school district, so I would have gone to a completely different high school. So it became a really no-brainer for me to be like, I don't really want to go to public high school, but that's so interesting that like it was a choice for you because I just feel like it's really not for most homeschoolers because
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure you ran into this or have run into this of like that messaging of like public school is bad and it's going to corrupt your kids. So like, did that exist in your house and your parents were just like, we're willing to kind of like fight against that and like, be a part of Lauren's education, even if she does go to public school?
Yeah, so I think when they started out, they both had gone to public school. So when they started out homeschooling, it really didn't have this religious backing, but my family is religious.
Right.
Like I said, I grew up deep in the evangelical church, and there just so happens to be, and especially at the time frame in the late 90s and early 2000s when we were homeschooling, there ended up being a lot of messaging around homeschooling saying that you need to pull your kids from school so that they don't fall into these evils, or really just that you don't let somebody else raise your kid. I hear that line a lot. Don't let the public school system raise your kid for you. And that if you want godly children, you have to raise them up yourself. And so that messaging definitely did creep in over time. I remember as a young kid, driving past the school, and all the homeschool kids, we would joke, like, wave to the prisoners, or like when kids were on a school bus, we would act like it was a jail bus. Which in hindsight is not funny, but we definitely did view school as, kind of a prison for children, like sitting in a class 8 hours a day in indoctrination. I don't know if that's something that necessarily my parents ever said to me. I don't think they would ever say that, or if that was just more culturally what kind of came about. But by the time that I decided to to public school, I should say, I don't think they were thrilled about it. I don't think that it was like an equal option in their mind. I think that they would have preferred that I had homeschooled because of kind of the cultural conversation at that time.
Well, they were probably stoked when you were like, okay, I want back.
Yes.
I want back into the thing. What's interesting is like you said, like, it's not necessarily that your parents were sending the message of like, oh, that's indoctrination or anything like that. Because like my parents were the same way. I went to public school for a couple years. I started homeschooling in second grade, did it all the way through. My sister, kindergarten through high school, was homeschooled. And so my parents never viewed public education as, like, I think, truly evil, or at least that was never the messaging we got, right? And so it's really the reason they pulled me out had to do more with the school systems in the area. They just were like, the test scores are not where we want them to be. We think we can do better, yada, yada, yada. Yes. So it's interesting that, like, we didn't really get that messaging necessarily from our parents, but yet it still creeps in from, like, who is it? Like, for me, it was the other homeschool families. It just kind of that subliminal messaging. Was that kind of the same for you? Of like, it was just other homeschool friends?
Yes, I think it was other homeschool families maybe who didn't have the option to go to public school. I think public school was used as a threat in those families. If you're not behaving, you're not doing your school. That's kind of a cliche. But in my family, going to public school was never used as a threat. But I think to these other kids, it was like, truly, this is the bad thing that will happen to you if you don't succeed in homeschooling. And so there were these negative ideas about it. And then alongside that, a lot of people who leave or start homeschooling and previously were in public school, if they make that big life shift, there are a lot of times were problems with the public school that they went to, whether they were getting bullied and there wasn't really any way for them to work that out, or they had, ADHD like my brother, and there wasn't enough staff to really accommodate all the kids. They didn't have a good experience while they were in public school. So you're also hearing firsthand from these other elementary schoolers being like, it was terrible. Everyone, I don't know, was terrible, basically.
Yeah, exactly. You do hear it's like a prison, right? Or it's like you said with the ADHD thing, it's like they couldn't meet me where I was, or there wasn't the services. I've had multiple parents on here who talk about, like, their kid needs a service and the school just can't provide it. So what's the option? Well, let's just pull them out and do it at home because we can give that to them. And I think that's like it's an interesting place where we exist, because I think that that's a valid thought, right? And a valid reason to do it. I just had a public school teacher on recently, and she was talking about the need also for parents to go to, like, the school board meetings and voice the fact that it's like, we have kids in this district who need these services. How do we get them to them? What do we need to do? Who do we need to elect? How do we need to allocate the money? Like, let's do that thing so that we can provide those. So it's a complicated issue, right? It's like there's not really just a, like, one size fits all Band-Aid that we can slap on this thing and be like, hey, everybody's happy and every problem is fixed.
Yeah, and that's why I always will say to people, especially, friends of mine that knew that I homeschooled and now they're thinking about homeschooling their kids, they'll come to me. And I'm honest about what I think are the drawbacks of homeschooling for some people, but I'm also honest that for some kids, I think it can be a really great option. It can be a beautiful thing. It can definitely be the best educational option in some cases if you're doing it right. And that's why I think it's important that some of us older homeschoolers are having conversations like these so that we can tell parents, hey, maybe this isn't such a great way of doing it, or maybe there are better options, because I'm sure that you also have improvements that you could make if you were to ever homeschool your children. I think I had a good homeschool education, but if I were to ever homeschool children, I would make some changes. And I think that new homeschool parents coming in, they want to do the right thing. These parents are not quitting their jobs and, teaching their children at home full time because they don't want to invest in their children. So I think giving them the resources to actually do it well is just really, really important. And will also make it more obvious when homeschooling isn't done well then, because there will be kind of this standard of how it is done well.
So in that kind of vein then, like, what is it that you think your parents did well in your schooling, and then what did they not do so well?
What they did really well was giving me autonomy over my education. And again, this is going to be different for every child. If you have a kid who doesn't like school at all and they're not motivated, just saying do whatever you want might not actually be serving that child in the best way. But my family really gave me the opportunity to do what I wanted to do and to set really high goals for myself. So what I set as my goal was to graduate with my 2-year degree, my associate's degree, before I graduated high school, because of the way that the college and high school graduation dates line up. And so I was able to do that by going back into the homeschool system. Whereas if I would have stayed in the public school system, they actually only selected the top, I want to say 2 or 3 kids to be able to go to the college. Whereas the college's rules are just that you have to be able to test in at a college level.
Okay.
So I was able to test in at a college level and do that through homeschooling, whereas I was not in the top 2 students at the public school. So I wouldn't have been able to go do that. So it really did save me a lot of money and give me a lot more exposure to other things. And yeah, I think that was a huge positive that would not have been possible without homeschooling.
Are we talking like kind of a dual enrollment situation where you're like, okay, I'm going to take math, science, whatever at the college, and that's also going to correspond and translate to my high school education as well, where you're taking it once? Or are you like, hey, I'm doing 2 separate classes that are, this is high school and this is college level?
So kind of a mixture of both, just because of the nature of homeschooling, I guess.
Right.
I did throughout. So I went through 8th grade and freshman year to public school. And then after that, I took like 1 art class at the public school, right? To maintain connections there. But otherwise, I was testing out of classes. I was not going on campus. I was getting textbooks. It's called CLEP. Mm-hmm. It's college level entrance something, I don't know. But it's in Minnesota. It's called a CLEP, and you just read the textbook, go and take the test, and if you pass, you get the college credit. So I was doing a mixture of that, homeschool classes, and then the public high school 1 art class. Once I became a junior, then I was just full-time at the college, and that was dual enrollment, and I stopped going to the public high school or doing homeschool classes on my own.
Because I did some CLEP exams as well, right? It's like, so I'm totally familiar with that, and that was like that saved me in college, because I ended up doing college in 3 years because I did summer school and then also had some CLEP exams under my belt, and that was a part of that. I had looked at doing the college high school thing, and it was just a little bit too much for me. And so but we had that dual enrollment thing was the piece that was too much. I could totally pick up a textbook and then go test out of something. But let's talk about that experience, because I obviously you had gone for a year and a half to a public school. So now transitioning, you're in high school and now you're going to a community college and a local college. How's that transition? Because like, did you grow up with co-ops and existing in a space where like you had to be in a classroom setting at all? Or was it very like, hey, we're doing school at the dining room table kind of a thing? Like, I don't know. Socialization comes up a lot with homeschoolers, right? Of like how we interact when we do get to like a college level and we have to be in a classroom or at a job or anything like that. So was that difficult in high school to transition into like a college kind of class, or was it fairly easy?
The community college was a hard transition for me, because when I was homeschooling and then even at the public school, they didn't really approach controversial topics. But once you go into community college, you are maybe more in depth covering evolution. Whereas then I'm feeling kind of this religious pull, because I had done religious curriculum, religious schooling primarily. feeling, am I denying my faith or am I doing something wrong? Because there's also this comparison to public school as being an exposure to sin, an exposure to the world. So I really felt like maybe this is my test too. Like maybe this is my exposure to that. So I think I had a lot more of a culture shock and just realizing like a lot of these things are actually normal and it's okay to have different opinions. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think that's such an interesting thing because like my culture shock had less to do with religion because I went to a Christian college. So I picked that specifically because I was like, I want the youth group feel. I want that okay, for the most part, everybody I'm gonna meet is gonna believe very similar to me. Yeah, we're gonna have our differences. But it's interesting because I remember my sister went to a local community college and and she came home and she was like, oh yeah, like I'm in class with this gay guy and we're talking about this in class and like all these different things and I'm like I just can't. It wasn't until I was out of college that I really I think felt the first major exposure to those things. So you're talking 21 years old, 22 years old, like that's when that hit for me as opposed to like I mean you're talking 16, 17 years old. All of a sudden it's like yeah, those are the big things that if you grew up religious, we don't talk about these things. We don't push these agendas. We don't whatever. And yeah, there is that combating kind of like, can I even read this textbook? Can I engage with this conversation? Like, yeah, let's talk a little bit about that because like I'm wondering like I don't know if it's just the part of me that loves to play devil's advocate, but I have always kind of been that person who like I just kind of like poking at people with the opposite of their opinion or viewpoint.
Yeah.
So maybe that wasn't quite as hard for me, but it was this denying of like my faith, like when it came to abortion and gay marriage and evolution and stuff like that. Like I liked picking the side of like pro those things. So, but I also felt kind of dirty about it. So like, what was going through your head as you were sitting in science class and you're like, okay, we're studying evolution now. What am I supposed to do with this?
Yeah, I had kind of this like God's not dead moment. It was very immature. But I remember coming home and just being like, we're talking about earth science and I don't believe in evolution. I had grown up being taught creationism. I believed that the earth was 6,000 years old. And so I understood that this other viewpoint was out there, but writing the correct answers down felt like they were asking me to deny my faith, which they were not. They were quizzing me on the textbook material, whether I agreed with it or not, right? But it was that was very difficult to me. And I was kind of encouraged by the people around me to stand for my faith and not write the actual real answers, like to write God as the answer or creation. I did not do that. I really struggled with it. I dealt with a lot of anxiety around it. And I'll give other examples too, but I really struggled with it and feeling like, is it okay for me to do this? Is it okay that I'm in these environments? Another example, just like you were talking about having so many different kinds of people in one class. I went from being homeschooled to being a 16-year-old in a class, and I learned what like being gender fluid was. This was in my sign language class. And I remember that was like, I had never heard of that before. This was back in like 2013 or 14. So no one really was talking about this stuff. And I remember just being like, is it even okay that I'm here, that I'm being exposed to this? Like, I just was really concerned about those things. And it came up in a lot of ways. We also were of the type of Christianity that didn't believe in yoga. I didn't know that until I had signed up for a yoga course. And that was my gym credit. I couldn't kind of just get out of that. And so there were really weird mental gymnastics I was doing where, my Christian friends were like, we're going to pray for you. And then while you're in yoga, just be praying the entire time so that you're not possessed by like the spiritual music that's playing or the positions that you're doing. And so that was kind of a bit of a head game. And then even with art class, my intro to art class had a nude model. And I was advised, which is another thing I did not do, but they were going to have a man come in and be a nude artist. And I was kind of talking about my like moral concerns about going to that class with some some mentors of mine, and they encouraged me to look up pictures of infants so that when I go to this art class, I would never have to look up at the adult man, and I could just draw infant genitalia, which is so much worse, so much grosser, weirder, wronger. And so, like, I think there was a lot of confusion for me going in this environment where people were a lot more just accepting and liberal and trying these things. And I had not seen anything like that. Everyone that I knew lived exactly like me. It was my only view of the world. But now in hindsight, I credit a lot of those things, or like one of the programs run by the Muslim Student Association. I credit those types of things for really pushing me forward in life and opening my mind, because I couldn't imagine without those experiences, what kind of adult I would be now today.
Yeah. The yoga thing is so interesting because it's reminding me of I was a dancer back in the day. I did swing and ballroom and English country, a lot of the weird homeschooly type stuff, but it was fun. It's fun. And it's, that was my mom's way of kind of being like, hey, Jacob's going to need to know how to talk to girls. So like, let's put him in dance class, kind of a thing. And hey, it worked. So, but anyway, but I had a back injury from a dance accident. And it was so funny because in therapy, they had me do yoga. And I remember not really thinking much of it at the time, but just kind of being like, okay, this is what the doctor's telling me to do. Whatever. It feels good. It helps. It's taking the pain away. And I remember posting about it on Facebook or something about how these yoga stretches were like really helping me. And the flood of comments of people being like, that is demonic. That is evil, sinful. You need to repent. And like all these things. And I was like, how can something that's helping me so much, and something that not only I use, but like my parents were, I was teaching them like, hey, here we do this, and this will like open you up and all these different things. We're all using this thing at my house, and somehow this is evil and wicked, and we've been deceived by that. And so kind of along that same line.
You're worshiping other gods.
Exactly. I'm like, I'm not sitting here, praying to praying to the Buddha. I'm just like, I'm just, using my body and being flexible and things like that. And so it's just funny because I credit that with, similar to you, of like, that was an eye-opening experience where it was like, I think the first time where I was like, I really just don't believe that this is wrong. Like this can't be a sinful thing. Like our bodies are designed to move, and they are, I don't know. I also just would always tell myself my own interpretation. I'm like, what do you think Jesus did for 40 days in the wilderness? He probably did some yoga poses, he's not just sitting there. Point. Exactly. Like, so yeah, well, so now that we've gotten through high school, did we move on to like a 4-year? Obviously you would have transferred in probably in like a sophomore, junior year level, but did you go to college after that?
Yes. So I didn't really know what I wanted to do after I graduated high school, but I had my associates, and everyone at the community college gave me really good advice. A lot of them were, older adults, much older adults who were coming back to school, and they just encouraged me, like, just go and get a degree, and it doesn't matter what it was. And for me, that ended up being really good advice. I wasn't, my dream is now to become like a doctor or something. So I went and I just moved on and got a communications degree from a 4-year college marketing degree. And that was honestly, I think because it was people my age, it was almost less of a culture shock, because the community college, there was just a lot of people at different life stages. Right. And so I think I was exposed to more. So I think it was actually almost easier going into the 4-year college environment with a bunch of other 18-year-olds. And I also felt like that style of college felt more like co-op to me, where you have a class once a week. Then you're doing all your homework for the week. A lot of it is self-led, not all of it, because you do have a teacher, but I liked the scheduling in college a lot more than in high school, when you didn't have as much control.
I'm wondering too, because one of the things I realized when I got to college was some of the sheltering that had existed in my homeschool experience. So like there was a lot of pop music and just like pop culture in general that I had just kind of missed. And I wasn't totally like removed from everything. Like I did go to the movies. I was allowed to do that. I did listen to music, and I knew who some pop stars were, but just not everybody, and that kind of a thing. But when I got to college, because I majored in music business, all of a sudden I had to play so much catch up of like, who is Kanye West? Which, that was a big one. I remember
Yeah.
just like hours and hours listening to hip hop and rap and like learning all of the boy bands. I just posted about this on one of my social medias about like I didn't know who like any of the boy bands were, and like having to learn all of that. One Direction was like at the height of their popularity, like, and I was like,
Yeah.
okay, I need to know everything there is to know about these things. And so, was there anything like that in college where you're like, okay, I'm with my peers, and yeah, I feel more comfortable, and maybe that's less of a culture shock. But were you missing out on any of the pop culture type stuff?
Yeah. Yeah. We missed out on a lot of that. I think my family used, what is it called? It's not Focus on the Family, Plugged In is maybe
Oh
it's
yeah,
called.
yeah.
They used Plugged In when we were younger to kind of screen what movies and books we would read. We weren't allowed to watch Pokemon or Power Rangers or whatever. Just kind of shows that certain Disney movies maybe that had too like much magic in them, stuff like that. And then as I got older, just a lot of the more pop, like Twilight, I wasn't allowed to watch. So I do feel like even still into my adult life, even just the other day, I was out at dinner and there was like 4 movies. People were like, "Have you seen this?" And I'm like, just assume I haven't seen any of it, um, because we really didn't watch TV that often. And then when we did, it was pretty regulated, which I honestly think probably a net positive. I don't think I would go so far if I had my own kids in monitoring things, or like, do I need to read the book before my child reads it? Probably not. Um, but I do also think with how prevalent stuff on the internet is right now, I do think that more parents could probably be doing more research into what their kids are consuming. So there is kind of,
Yeah.
I don't know, this middle area to the extremes that I think is
Yeah.
probably healthy. But definitely in college, I would say the media, so the music that I listened to, the movies that I had watched, shows I had watched, all of that was pretty limited. I didn't really know what people were talking about. And actually, it was to the point where my nickname for the first two, well, I went to college for 3 years because I added a minor at the end, but they nicknamed me Amish for the first 2 years. And like there was kind of this running backstory that was a joke that I had escaped a cult and like was on my Rumspringa or whatever. And someone gifted me once like a Amish romance novel because it just was so obvious to other people. And, fortunately, we all had good humor about it and they understood that it's like, yeah, Lauren's just not going to know. But I noticed that a lot more. Yeah.
Yeah.
When I went to college.
That's funny. Yeah. I don't think I had any nicknames like that, but I definitely one of the
That's a
things
blessing, probably.
a little bit, yeah. But I definitely one of the things that I did in college, I was weirdly really kind of like embarrassed and ashamed of being a homeschooler. Like when I was at home, I don't care, but that's all my friends were homeschooled, so it's like it
Yeah.
didn't really matter. But in college, I had kind of decided. I moved across the country. I was moved from California to Illinois. I had decided like this is my chance to reinvent myself. I get to be whoever I want to be at college,
Mhm.
and so I had just made this decision that I was like, I'm not going to tell anybody I'm homeschooled. I'm just going to say I went to private school, really small, and I'm going to chalk it up to that. I can, hide behind the religious aspect of like I am
Yeah.
in a religious school, so like, it's probably not going to be that strange that I haven't seen Harry Potter,
Yes.
or listen to Kanye West, right? It's like just stuff like that. I was like, I can kind of like duck behind some other things and probably get away with it. And what's so funny is I had a professor who really quickly pulled me into her office and she was like, yo, you gotta like learn to chill. And I was like, what do you mean? And she's like, you're just doing too much. And I was like, I don't even know what that means. And she's like, you're just like, you talk too much. You're like, you're just like trying too hard to be like a normal kid. And she's like, what? Why is that? And I came clean with her and I was like, I was homeschooled. And she's like, oh, okay. So here's what we're gonna do. Take a breath when you're with a group of people, just like you got to just learn to hang. Like that was the thing. And I was like, okay. And so I think I figured it out fairly quickly. There's definitely still things that people pick up on that I'm like, they're like, oh yeah, that makes sense when it comes out that I'm homeschooled. They're like, oh yeah, that definitely makes sense.
There always is a little something that I can spot in other homeschoolers, and it's never a bad thing, but it always hurts a little bit when someone's like, were you homeschooled? Like when people notice it in me, I'm like, oh, I haven't recovered as much as I thought.
Yeah,
It's
it's
still there.
always just it's something subtle. Like I don't like it's a way we talk about something or like like for me, it's getting called out on like, oh, you haven't seen this thing.
Mhm.
Typically, it's that trigger, or saying like, I didn't watch Harry Potter till I was an adult, right? So it's like,
Yep.
I don't have the connection to those movies that other people do, and they're like, why is that? Well, I was a homeschool kid, guys, and they're
Yeah.
like, oh, okay, this easily, marks it off as kind of the you're good. Well, let's talk a little bit about kind of what you're doing now. So, I mean,
Mhm.
you mentioned about Unreligiously and its commentary on Christianity as it sits today and the religious
Yeah.
environment. I have kind of, I would say, binging probably most of your content. I've been
Thank
going
you.
back through the archives, and you've got some really cool stuff in there around,
Thank you.
I mean, a lot of topics that have been hit on the show before, but like purity culture and deconstruction and those types of things. So tell me a little bit about like where where did you get the drive to kind of do that, and then what are you doing over there? What's the mission?
Yeah, well, I feel like just growing up homeschooling and then with the religious background that I did, I have this cultural background almost that now we're very decentralized. We can't share with each other. So I kind of hold it alone. And I wanted to create something where I could connect with other people who either can relate to the homeschooling or the religious background that I grew up in. We don't focus only on homeschooling. I definitely have talked a lot about homeschooling. I have videos about kind of comparing the experience of homeschooling to that of third culture kids, which is where they grow up in one country and then for their entire adult life they move somewhere else. So their adult culture is completely different than what they grew up in childhood. Doesn't really exist anymore for them. I have videos about that. Like you said, purity culture. And I do a lot of deep dives on individual creators or couples, but I try not to snark on people. I try to really explain both sides of view, maybe where the Christian viewpoint would be coming from, and then also what my viewpoint now would be as somebody who leans atheist, agnostic, and yeah, is just not there anymore. But I don't have hard feelings either towards my upbringing. I don't think extremism is healthy in any form. So we talk about what is healthy religion, what is not healthy religion, and kind of all of its forms in America. Recently, too, I would say specifically Christian nationalism is a big topic. The Religious Liberty Commission is operating right now. It's set for a year period, and they're a little bit over halfway through. And part of the Religious Liberty Commission is talking about education and what's going to be happening for the future of education. Homeschooling is a part of that. So I have videos about that and just things that would kind of impact people who grew up like us, impact their kind of their worlds.
Yeah, no, and I highly encourage my audience, like, if any of this is interesting to you, definitely it's going to be linked down below. If you're watching on a video, it's popping up somewhere on the screen probably as well. But Unreligiously is Lauren's channel. Go deep dive over there. I'm curious a little bit because I'm also deconstructed
Mm-hmm.
Christian. And so if you don't mind, like, talk a little bit about that process for you, because it's what's so interesting is there was a long time for me where I felt like it started in college. And then I
Yeah.
was like, no, it started when I was like 22, 23. I was out of college, kind of a thing. But more recently, I have really started to realize that my deconstruction started all the way back, like in high school.
Yeah.
And so, anyway, I'm gonna turn it over to you. But like, tell me a little bit about like your deconstruction journey of like where does it start? What was kind of the first domino to fall in a lot of senses where you're like, okay, something's not adding up here.
Yeah, well, so I mean, I was always a Christian. I gave my heart to Jesus when I was 5 years old. Um, and I didn't really question it. All of my friends were Christians, group homeschooling, like we've talked about. So we were kind of in that bubble where there wasn't a lot of other viewpoints. But I do think that then once I went to public school and then community college, I was starting to grapple with these questions a lot more, thinking about things like, can I write this answer on my test? And if not, why does God care? That, like, God knows that I really believe that the earth is 6,000 years old. So why does God care if I'm writing the correct answer down on a test to get the right points? Or why does God care if I'm stretching to help my physical injury? I think I just had a lot more of these. No, I don't even want to say they're like deep theological questions, but really these practical life questions about religion coming up for me. And then there also was a lot of pressure on me at my church. I think because we were homeschooled and a lot of other people were homeschooled, they would use the kids to set up and tear down because we were a church plant. We didn't have a permanent building.
Yeah.
So like on youth group days, we'd be getting there at 3:00 and wouldn't be leaving till 10 because we'd be setting up and tearing down. And they had like another homeschooler learn to code and she did the website for everything for the church. Like we were worked very hard. I think my little brother is another example. He was like not even old enough to be in youth group, and they had him actually running the worship team for a youth group with kids older than him, because again, it's just like when you're homeschooled, people think you have a lot of free time, which in some cases you might, but it was a lot of pressure. So that all really led to my deconstruction. I had to start really thinking about these topics, thinking about, is it worth it for me to stay? But I didn't actually stop believing in God until I was probably 24 or 25 years old, I would say. It really took me a long time to even admit to myself really basic things like I don't believe in hell anymore. I remember not believing in hell for a few years before I could even tell my childhood best friend, who had also deconstructed, because I was so scared that I don't even know that if I spoke it out loud, that then I would go to hell, or I could be leading my friends astray and down the wrong path because of my own unbelief. And so there was just a lot of fear and silence wrapped up in it. But the funny part is that now that I have deconstructed and I've talked more openly with my friends about it, obviously I have my YouTube channel, so people know come to find out that a lot of people actually were going through the same process as me on basically the same timeline as me, but none of us felt comfortable enough to talk about it with each other. So that's kind of really the events that led to my deconstruction. It's not anything massive. It's just this anxiety in real life kind of pushing against my faith, I think. But yeah, now I still have a positive view of religion in general. I think that you can do religion in a very healthy way. But I do think that how I grew up with evangelicalism, specifically in America, which is kind of the denomination credited with Christian nationalism, I think that they have become very legalistic in a lot of ways and may not be the most healthy thing for most people.
One of the things that really struck me with what you just said was like the not even wanting to tell your friends. Like that was difficult for me too, because growing up, one, in the homeschool community, but two, in the church community, it's very much like those are your people. That is your world for a lot of it. And so even at 24, to come out and say like I don't buy into this anymore is like scary, because all of a sudden like those people for me were still my friends. They were still my connection to that world. And so there is that like, am I just gonna be cut out of all of this? Because I've seen that happen.
Yeah.
And so there is kind of that like, ooh, like am I ready to let go of that? Because that's what it is to really publicly say it out loud. And even like telling my parents, like that was just terrifying, because I know friends who are gay or gender fluid, and like when they came out, like their parents were like, kick them out of the house, get out of here, kind of a thing. And I was like, not that my parents, I mean, I was on my own, I lived on my own, like, but there was that fear in me of like, is this it? Like, is this the end of my relationship with these people? And so, but come to find out, as soon as you talk about it, then other people feel the confidence, right, to be like, oh yeah, like I'm in the same boat as you, right? And you're like, holy crap, like, what, like, why have we not been talking about this for 4 years? Like we've been kind of going back and forth with these questions for a while now. And so I don't know about you, but like I definitely feel so much more confident in talking about those things with people, even who are still in it, because I'm just like, I just don't think it's a valid enough reason for you to cut me out of your life. And I'm not going to cut you out of my life just because you believe something different than me.
Yeah, I would completely agree with that. I will say one thing that has been hard, I have dealt with people cutting me off because I no longer am a Christian, although that hasn't been the primary response from people. I think the primary response has been people being like deeply disturbed on my behalf.
Same. I have some of that too.
Yeah. And then they've let me know, multiple people, this isn't one person, that they're praying for me daily for my salvation. And so I think for me too, I've gotten a lot better about being open about it, but it's also still hard in some ways because it feels like causing people unnecessary pain, or it feels like by being honest that then you're burdening them with this, like the weight of your soul. I don't know
Yeah.
if that's something that you experienced with your family at all.
Yeah, I definitely did. It's really funny because so in college I took a religions class, and
Mm-hmm.
one of the goals of that class was we went and looked at a lot of different church denominations. So I grew up going to Baptist church, then I went to a non-denominational church that had a lot of ties to Calvary Chapel, so very similar in that vein.
Yeah.
And then I went to a school that was a Free Methodist school. So anyway, but the professor, his goal was, hey, we're gonna go to all these different things. So we went to Catholic Mass, and then we did Free Methodist, and we did a Baptist church, but we also went to a Jewish synagogue, and we also went to an Islamic mosque, and that was so eye opening because I wanted to go in there and be very combative,
Mm-hmm.
because that's just kind of what you're trained to do, right? Like,
Defend the faith.
yeah, the
Yeah.
Jews and the Muslims, they don't believe the same thing we do. The Jews are a little bit closer, but they just don't have the full picture yet. Um, but so I wanted to be combative, and there were definitely people on that trip who were very combative. And for whatever reason, when we got there, I just was like, you know what? I'm just going to hear these people out.
Yeah.
And specifically at the mosque, the leader there, he was like, the thing with religion is that the reason that we want to minister and evangelize to each other is because we love each other and because we want to see each other in the afterlife. That's the goal. That's the whole reason. And so it shifted my view of like when people do say the things of like, I'm praying for you, or, I'm praying for your salvation. I understand that it comes from a place of love.
Yes.
It's a little twisted and it's not always the greatest. And, sometimes you gotta have this tough conversations with people of like, hey, like, this feels really weird. I don't love that you do this for me, or I just don't want to talk about it like that. But if hopefully they're open enough and willing enough, this is not always the case, but if they are, there are a lot of times that those people are willing to hear you out and say, like, they are not necessarily trying to cause discomfort in your life. And in the same way, I don't want to cause discomfort in their life of them being worried about my religious anything. I can't
Yeah.
control whether they do or not, but like at the end of the day, like I'm good. I'm happy. I'm living my life. I'm enjoying it. And I'm open and I'm willing to have those conversations with you. I'm not going to cut you out, and I'm not going to cut you off just because you want to talk about those things.
Yeah.
That's just where I exist now. It's this gray nebulous zone, and I'm cool with that, and like
Mhm.
hopefully you can be too.
Yeah.
Um
Yeah.
that's kind of the place I exist right now, and it's it works for some, but same point as you. I mean, I've lost a couple friends and people along the way that are just kind of like, they can't ride with that. I'm like, you know what? All good. You go do you, focus on you. That's fine.
Have you, since you have entered adulthood, left Christian college as well, have you tried to catch up at all on any of the media, any of the movies? Have you watched Harry Potter?
Yes, absolutely. Harry Potter is now like, yeah, I bought him for I think my birthday this past year. I was like, I gotta
Okay,
have
so
the
you're a
whole.
fan.
Yeah, no, I'm a fan. And what's funny is now I've like, I got my parents to watch them, so like they're fans now. Like, there's definitely
That's so funny.
what's been cool about, I think, me deconstructing is even like, even though a lot of my family is still religious, there are areas that they are willing to kind of loosen up some of the reins around the things that were so tight when we were kids. Because I think you had mentioned this earlier. Parents don't necessarily want bad things for their kids. They want their kids to grow up in a safe, loving environment. They want to protect them from the evils of the world. And they're kind of just trying the best they can. Sometimes they get really bad advice and they just roll with it, and it's not until years later that they realize like that was bad advice and it didn't really matter. We could have
Yeah.
watched Harry Potter and then had a conversation around why magic isn't real or this is witchcraft or whatever.
Yeah.
We could have done that. We didn't, because that was the harder option, as opposed to just being like, nope, we're not watching that.
Mhm.
And so I think that's been really helpful, is I have a lot of people in my life that are, again, willing to have that conversation of like, yeah, we screwed up with this thing,
Yeah.
and we're gonna own that. But now let's like be willing to like embrace something new and see does it align with my beliefs or not? And I keep reminding people who are religious still, I'm like, if you still believe, then you also have the power of God on your side.
Yeah.
And if you read the Bible, Jesus didn't shy away from the people who disagreed with him. He went right into the action. He went right into the conversation and all those types of things. And so I try to push them to do that same thing. It's like engage with the thing that you're against so that you understand what it is before you really pass judgment on it. And so, yeah, that's me, I guess, being really preachy now. But
no, I think that's really relatable. And I don't know, something that strikes me about watching your videos and then just from our conversations that we've had together is that you grew up in California. I grew up in Minnesota, and we homeschooled in very different areas. We grew up in different churches, different denominations, but there still are so many similarities to the culture of homeschooling, this I don't know, unidentifiable thing that makes it so we can tell who the other homeschoolers are. Like, it is still the same, which is really interesting to me. And I wanted to know if you have any theories why that is.
Oh man, I can't figure it out, to be honest. That's been like that came up, I think, like literally one of my like early episodes was a buddy of mine. We were talking about it, like he's been around the world. He's a missionary, and he is like he's like, I was in Thailand and I ran into people and like just instantly knew that they were like a homeschool family kind of a thing. And I think that's like what's so it needs to be studied at some point, because like what is that magic thing about the homeschool world that like is it a smell, is it a hormone, is it a look, like what is that thing that makes it that way? Because even like you said, like we grew up thousands of miles apart from each other.
Yes.
Very different, but also like very similar. And so also what is shaping and making those things? That has been a recent thing for me where I'm starting to realize I'm like, okay, like we got to start studying like how is it that like, you know, this family in Minnesota, this family in California, I have other people, friends in New Jersey, like we all like kind of same timeline, very similar upbringing. Why is that? What is that thing that is driving that piece? So I don't have an answer for you, but
it's interesting to think about. I've had this conversation with other homeschoolers as well, and it's definitely like a well-known the X Factor. It's like a well-known thing, but it's nobody has been able to put their finger on it. So
I'm curious. You kind of touched on it a little bit earlier, but like with this next generation of homeschooling that's coming, I think COVID taught a lot of people a lot of things, right? That, you know, school could come into the house and people could survive. And some people were like, hey, let's make this the permanent thing. And so there definitely is this kind of major uptick right now in homeschooling. And so when you have friends who are coming to you or just random people who are like, hey, I'm thinking about doing this, but I don't want to mess it up. What is I guess like the major thing that you're like, hey, look at this first to decide whether you really want to do this?
What I normally say to people is to ask themselves if they're doing it to expand the kids' world or to kind of reduce the kids' world. Because I think there are parents who homeschool because they want to maybe overprotect, they want to limit what their child is exposed to in a way that I think does ultimately hurt kids once they enter adulthood. I don't think that you should be limiting access to a quality, well-rounded education, knowing that, you know, evolution is a theory, things like that. So I think if you're pulling your kid out of school so that they have less in their world, I think that is maybe something that you should reconsider. But if you're doing it to give them more because your kid has a learning disability and you can give them a better education at home, or for me, I was able to do PSEO and get my 2-year college degree and save a lot of money. You know, my world was opened broader in the end, I think, because of homeschooling. And so I just ask people to kind of ask themselves that question, because the narratives around homeschooling right now are different than they were when we grew up, but they're still almost entirely fear-based. And that's not to say that they're not legitimate. It is definitely situation to situation in what area school you're going to, what resources are available. But in a lot of cases, the people that I see homeschooling for religious reasons, for example, they kind of want to shrink down the community, shrink down what their kid has access to, and all of that. I don't know if that makes sense, but that's kind of what I direct people to, is just what's your motivation behind it, and then always be willing to change, because homeschooling's not going to work for every kid. I have 3 siblings. 2 of us opted to do public school, 2 opted not to. And we definitely all learned very differently and got very different things and experiences out of homeschooling. So just being flexible with yourself too. If it doesn't go well, that's not a failure. Is you being a homeschool parent. Just like if public school doesn't work out, it's not necessarily a failure on the school.
No, I totally agree with you. That's something that I've come to realize, and like it's something I say a lot on this show, of like, you gotta find the right fit for your kid. I know that like who I am as a person, I benefited from homeschooling. I would have been fine in public school. I really would have. The way my brain works, the way that I operate as a human being, I would have been fine. Mm-hmm. My sister, I think homeschooling was the best option for her. I think she would have needed maybe a different type of school, but like that's the thing, is it's like my parents were willing to kind of try and experiment with us to figure out the things that worked and didn't work. And so it was never a consistent thing. It was always an experiment and a test to see, is this program working? Is this curriculum working? Are these co-ops working? Are these friends working? Yes, no. If they weren't, like, we're moving on. We're going to the next thing. And so that is, again, to your point of just like, it is a continual optimization to figure out what works best for kids and in the education world, and hopefully it's to expand, because I think that's my biggest piece. I talked about 3 previously on a previous episode. I talked about 3 things that I want to see different. The expansion piece is one of those, of just like, let's cover so much more than we did in the little bubble that I existed in. So anyway, Lauren, is there anything else we haven't touched on that you feel is important, whether it's homeschool related, religion, anything else, before I let you go?
Well, I just am warning people right now about the Religious Liberty Commission. I think it's going to make really big changes when it comes to education, and not just for homeschoolers. It's going to make a big difference when it comes to private education, online schooling, funding for schools. It's going to make a big difference in a lot of things. So I think it's worth paying attention to. And for anybody who watches this, I would just encourage you to take a look into what is being done right now, because no matter what you choose to do with your kids' schooling in the future, this will impact it. Yeah,
no, that's a huge one. You brought that up when we chatted previously, and I started looking into it because of that. And something, again, on a recent episode, I had a public school teacher on. The biggest piece of advice that she gave for someone like myself, who I'm not planning on having kids. I don't currently have kids, but it is one of those things where I still get a vote on who runs the school programs. Yes. And so being educated on those things and talking to people who do have kids and understanding how all of that's operating, like, as a whole, I think it's a net positive that we have well-educated kids, we got smart kids, and we give them the resources they need, right? So those things are important to me just as a human being, and that's what I want to see my tax money go towards. So educate yourself, people. That I'm going to link that down below too, so that people can easily find it. But yeah, go research that. Lauren, this has been so much fun. I appreciate you coming on.
Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. And to the audience, of course, it has been the Ex-Homeschoolers Club. I hope you enjoyed. If you enjoyed, leave a comment. Let me know your favorite part. If you got any other questions for Lauren, maybe we'll have her on do another part. Be sure to go check out her channel and what she's doing over there. And until next time, we'll see ya. Peace.